Good afternoon. In an effort to make up for the on-time performance of prior meetings, you know who you are. In an effort to make up for the on-time performance, I'll get this meeting started if I can. Do we have any public speakers? Okay. Then approval of the minutes, please. Can I have a motion on that? In favor? Opposed? Thank you. Linda, to the work plan.
There are no changes in terms of deletions to the work plan. We have, on some occasions, added some items as they ripen and are programmed to be discussed with the committee, but nothing has been taken off the work plan at this time.
Okay. The majority of this meeting is really focused toward the East Side Access Project. But before we get there, certainly from my perspective, I think from Tom's perspective, one of the absolute most critical things that we're doing for New York City Transit right now is the renewal of the signal system and the introduction, building off of the Canarsie Line project of the computer-based train control for our system. And I thought it would be very useful for Tom and for Fred to be able to speak to some work that we've been doing, dealing and working cooperatively with the international community around this, because there is a lot of experience out there about CBTC, and we need to benefit from it. We need to be part of that community, and I'm very happy that we've organized this forum. And if you could speak to that, Fred, I think that'd be helpful.
If the slides are ready. If not, you have the presentation in your packet if you'll just follow along with me. We conducted a peer review more than a decade ago when we first undertook the communication-based train control strategy. And at that time, we were surrounded by a number of peer transit properties who had just as much experience as us, not that much. So it was more than due for us to go back and invite that community to sit down with us and have some real good discussions about how best to move forward, where we're going, what we're doing. I'm very pleased to report to you that the response to our request from those agencies was tremendous. We have engaged and we have participated in industry conferences over the last few years to share with others our experience. Most of the North American continent has been watching us very closely due to the size of transit and our potential going forward. But in this case, when we reached out to the other agencies, they were more than pleased to come and sit with us. And Tom had reached out to the executive directors to ensure that they sent us the best possible people to engage in our discussions. And they did that with 2 members from each of the peer agencies you see listed on the slide, as well as 5 of the major CBTC suppliers, which we also invited to this 3-day conference. We did support it with consultants who we utilized to make sure that we had a very structured and professional discussion over the course of the 3 days to facilitate the program and to contribute as they could as well. We had 6 major goals. Now, in the past, I said we participated in conferences, but we wanted to target this very specifically to our needs, to our concerns, and to the challenges that we face, and to get those agencies who now have experience in deploying their own CBTC systems to share with us their individual experiences. So we focused a lot on lessons learned. They had heard ours at previous conferences, so we wanted them to share with us in a small forum with their peers on their exact experiences. We also wanted to get from them ideas on different deployment strategies going forward. Most of them were familiar with us, but then again we wanted to hear from them on how they felt we could proceed best. An ultimate goal was to make sure that we are optimizing our CBTC design within New York City Transit constraints. And our constraints are rather unique. Most of you know we run a 24/7 operation. That is not typical throughout the world. Most systems have a window of opportunity to do major capital reconstruction, to do testing. We do not. So their input to that and their support of that was very important to us. And based on the chairman's directive to all of us to make sure we're spending every dollar as best we can, we engaged them on their suggestions of how best we could bring down the overall cost of deploying CBTC, both from a budget and a schedule perspective. And obsolescence, you've heard us talk about these issues with our electronic systems in our communications and network projects as well. It's an issue that every agency shares with us, how best to deal with obsolescence of the new electronic equipment going forward. And lastly, our main goal was to talk about our strategy to deploy an integrated test facility going forward. We had discussions with London Underground over the years. They were very sensitive to this issue as well, because the concern of inconveniencing riders while we try to test new equipment on two-line railroads, two-line transit systems, and they provided us strategic input into that also. Next slide. We talked about a lot of things over the 3 days, but I just want to highlight some of the 5 major points that we did discuss. And that is both on the supplier side and on the agency side, they recognize for us to go forward with an interoperable strategy, meaning we want different suppliers to be able to supply on the entire transit system. The key component was for us to standardize our specifications, which we call the I-squared spec, the I2S spec. From a supplier standpoint, particularly those that are interested in working with us on future procurements, there's a lot of risk involved in changing or tweaking your specifications. And both on the owner side and on the supplier side, the goal is to minimize and reduce that risk, because the suppliers want to be able to invest in a design, but then to be able to sell it at multiple properties. And that was the strategy that was used with those involved with us 10 years ago. And additional suppliers would like to get qualified, and they see the fastest way of doing that is for us to provide them with a capability, a testing facility, an integrated test facility that they can utilize to test their products, both on the full CBT systems and subsystems as well. There was one area of interface that we were working to create interoperability as well, and that was on the communication side. But when you look at the percentage of the work going forward that involves the communication piece, it's so small that the industry basically told us it wasn't worth their time and effort to invest in that, to create an interoperable specification. So they basically agreed with us that we should decide on one, pick it, give it to everyone to utilize, and we could move a lot quicker as well. We did discuss how we package the projects. Going to just go back to that last item with CBTC going forward. Most of you are familiar with our last procurement, which was the Flushing line, a very large procurement. It's important that you all understand that the CBTC piece is only a portion of that. We still have a lot of state of good repair work. We're building 2 interlockings at Times Square at First Avenue. That's atypical to the industry. They're used to coming in and overlaying their system on systems that basically are out of state of good repair. So going forward, we're looking to break that out, to move the state of good repair work so that the CBTC can move a lot quicker as an overlay over rehabilitated signal systems. Next slide. Extensive discussion of cost and schedule. And the key to that going forward, besides the state of good repair work, is to get the fleet equipped first. And the reason why that's so critical to us here at New York City Transit, because as you know, we run mixed fleets. We have 19 different lines, 26 services that share lines, share corridors through Manhattan, 8th Avenue, 7th Avenue, 6th Broadway, multiple train services. The fastest way to deploy CBTC to get benefits from it initially and the full utilization of it is to get ahead with the fleet. Most of you know the history we had on the Canarsie line, which was our pilot project. Each time we had to wait to equip more cars because of the tremendous growth we saw, 45% increase in ridership during the course of that construction project. Going forward, we need to get ahead of that, which means the fleet really has to come first. One important point the suppliers made, because of the example of the Flushing procurement, was the role of the actual installer, the electrical installer. And they suggested we have a follow-up discussion with the major installers to identify potential opportunities to decrease the overall construction cost. And we've set up for October 28th to do exactly that, based on that recommendation. Another thing that's unique to us, because we run the 24/7, is we have to run work equipment, work trains, in between our revenue service. And for CPTC, that's very unique. With most systems that have that 4, 5, 6 hour window where they shut down all revenue trains and can run work equipment, there isn't a need to equip those trains. that is unique to us, and that's an area where we're going to look for the suppliers to help us to come up with an alternative solution to enable us to equip those trains so they can run in between revenue trains. 3 days of discussion. As I said, we were very focused. We wanted to address our issues, but we did open it up since we had a wealth of experience both on the property side and on the supplier side to ideas that you would consider somewhat out of the box. And they did offer 3 major ones to us. Of course, from the supplier side, they'd like to lock into longer-term and larger contracts, so they suggested we consider a region-type procurement, even if it involved a base contract with multiple options over the years. That's something that we will spend some time thinking about, but our concern all along with our strategy for interoperability was always to maintain competitive procurements going forward. Yes, Andrew?
Fred, what are you referring to when you say region? Are you referring to a piece of a line, a piece of a borough, what?
Like the 6th Avenue corridor, or an entire borough would be one consideration. So that we need to give a little more thought to as we roll out in future years. The second item is basically, because again, that risk issue with suppliers is they're looking for us to play more of a leadership role with the IEEE, which is the Electrical Engineering Association, to use our specification and basically sell it to the rest of North America. So again, the supplier industry will not have to deal with new designs and tweaking their existing designs, that they can roll it out once we establish those interoperable standards. Overall, though, in summary, they basically gave us consensus that our proposal right now to go forward with an integrated test facility, which we have a procurement action on this month for the Culver line, to create that is what the industry is looking for us to get that standardization as quickly as possible, and that will facilitate our ability to qualify additional suppliers and sub-suppliers, sub-system suppliers of communication-based equipment. And our strategy as it's laid out in the current 12 to 14 program is consistent with that, as the next project and the last project for funding in the 12 to 14 time frame would start to equip our R160 fleet with CBT's equipment, which would give us the immediate benefit of overspeed protection on those trains once it's installed.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do here is not only accelerate the ability of us to move fast. I mean, 20 years ago this month was the month after 14th Street. We had a terrible accident, and we knew we had to do something to go beyond the limitations that wayside block signaling gives to overspeed protection. And I'm a little disheartened to say that 20 years later we've only got one line in with CBTC. So we've got to accelerate that, and the Chairman has asked us to do that. We're going to do that by not only promoting competition, but trying to get out of our own way. And to go to the international community, which has done a much better job at accelerating the deployment of communication-based train control, is where we have to go. By and large, the industry in the United States follow us as a lead, so there won't be a problem on us in developing the standard. The importance of the test track is one in which we can actually outfit a piece of track with wayside equipment, and then as the manufacturers either install that wayside equipment or cardboard equipment, we can test it, and we can do so on our right-of-way, interoperability between suppliers, but also with our system. I'd like to say that 20 years from now we'll be a lot farther along than just a couple lines. We have to. The destiny of the Transit Authority demands it. The ability to equip cars with this feature before you actually have a full-fleshed communication-based train control, I want to underscore, because overspeed protection is exceptionally vital and important to you. If you want to run more trains, run them at higher speeds and do so safely.
Questions, thoughts?
Which section of the Culver line is the test track?
It's on the express track between Church Avenue interlocking and 4th Avenue interlocking.
If you recall, years ago we used to use the express tracks on the C Beach, but now we moved over there because you got inside-outside operation grades and things like that, and C Beach really didn't provide that. And down the road we're going to have a lot of work going on C Beach and some of the stations, so we don't want to interfere with that.
All the work going on the Culver line, does that impact the testing?
No. It facilitates the actual installation of the wayside equipment right now, Andrew.
Other thoughts? Okay. I think the focus of the rest of the meeting will really be on the East Side Access Project, a small little project for us. And I think, Helena, you're coming up to join the table as well. Thank you. So, if we can step back just for a second, over the past month, I have taken the opportunity to visit all of our mega projects. The number 7 line project, the Fulton Street Transit Center, 2nd Avenue Subway. And I think what comes across, and East Side Access, I think what comes across as you visit these projects is a tremendous sense of progress. You go up to the number 7 line project and the tunnel is done, you're pouring the concrete for the platform, and it feels real. It feels real. You go to Fulton Street Transit Center, you don't have to ask anymore what this project will look like. You can see the steel, and it's there, and again, it feels very, very real to you in the way that that's going forth. Last week, we had the extraordinary experience of breaking through the tunnel boring machine on the was it the east or the west, Michael? I always get mixed up. The west tunnel, right? The west tunnel. No, the east tunnel. Okay, the east tunnel. And standing there and seeing this massive machine literally break through the earth, it looked like it was something out of a science fiction movie or something of that nature. And these are all things that are happening and progressing. And I think that this committee's been focused on these projects as we should be. I think we have tried to bring to it real thought in the way it's happening. And I think Michael and his team have worked with a great deal of diligence toward moving them forward. Having said that, all of these projects are large and complicated. The smallest of these projects is larger than anything that the MTA had done for an entire generation before this, by a wide margin. So they are complicated, they have risks, and one of the things that I think we set out when we reformed this committee was to say that this is a place to bring real transparency to these types of projects. Whether the news was good or whether the news was bad. Over the past few months, as we've been talking about the East Side Access project, I think it's been clear to all of us that this is a project that is facing significant challenges. Michael has previously put forth some of the issues with the project. He's previously talked about some of the steps that we're trying to take in terms of mitigations to the project, but I think it is quite clear to everyone that the project has real challenges in front of it, and that the ability to be able to work within a framework that protects the Long Island Railroad service, that works with the actions being taken by Amtrak, and that works in an incredibly confined space, I think is proving quite difficult. I felt it was important for this committee that we take the same point about transparency that we've been talking about all the way through and shine the light on this project, even though I think some of the message is not very positive right now. But I think this is the time that we have to do it, and I think if we're going to find our way through this, we have to remain committed to doing it in that sense. In doing that, I think that it's important to hear from Michael and his team. It's also important to hear from the independent engineer. The independent engineer works for this committee. That's the place that they report to. And it's important for us to hear that they're in agreement or where there are differences in what's being heard. I think the other point here, and I'm happy that Helena's here, is that what's also become apparent as we've been going through this exercise is the vital integration between the work going on here and the other efforts that are going on with the Long Island Railroad. And it is not possible to separate the two. 2nd Avenue Subway is largely happening apart from New York City Transit right now. It can happen in that way. It just has to cut over at the end. The number 7 line is happening in that way. When you talk about the impact of this project in Queens, with the Long Island Railroad, with the complexity of what is going on there, you can't separate it from the day-to-day operations of the railroad, and you can't separate it from the other works that are going on. And I don't think there's ever going to be a way that we can separate those things. And I think that creates a hand-in-hand aspect of this project between the Capital Construction Group and the Long Island Railroad that is very different than we have on the other projects that we're doing right now. So with that, Michael, I guess I'll turn to you, and then Helena will be jumping in as appropriate, and the independent engineer, I think, will be speaking after your report. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Let me start by actually pointing out that to bring Long Island Railroad service to Grand Central Terminal. Oh, is it? It's on. Oh, okay. I don't know if that works. Let's see. Yes, it does work. Okay, to bring the Long Island Railroad service to Grand Central Terminal, four distinct elements must be completed, three of which are constructed, related: the Manhattan Tunnel Obstruction Stations, the Queens Tunnels, reconfiguration of the Harold interlocking, and last but not least, operational readiness and commissioning by the Long Island Railroad. Let me point out that at past meetings, we have mentioned the challenges to the East Side Access schedule. And in fact, some of in both Harold and Manhattan, and some of these delays, we experienced additional delays this summer. In order to, when we are here in June, what we said is that we're going to undertake an out-of-the-box thinking and started with mitigation to reduce the impacts and potentially maintain the revenue service date that we propose. The Amtrak recently announced total track replacement, notwithstanding the fact that we did have our own delays, has shifted in a way the critical path through the Harold. And as such, this report will summarize the mitigations that we have evaluated, but the moment these things came on board, we have now started to look at mitigating measures to implement that will actually mitigate and allow for the operation of Long Island Railroad and Amtrak to continue, as well as our construction. I'm hoping that it's moved. Again, in June, I'm sorry, that's it. When we committed out-of-the-box mitigations, we looked at a number of things. The first one, to actually create new access points for the work in Manhattan and resequence that work. They examined the sequence and duration of operational readiness, that this is something that is very important. Pre-purchase of critical systems equipment, as well as a review with Long Island Railroad in the feasibility of beginning revenue service with only 3 rather than 4 tunnels in Queens being operational. As far as Manhattan goes, we had a project that was totally linear. The only place to enter it was in Queens, in and out, and we needed to provide additional access points, then allow multiple contractors by having that to work in the tunnels at the same time simultaneously. That was not possible before. And then, of course, strategically repackaging the critical work. What we're doing here is showing that the current plan basically had only the ability to come in from Queens. What we have done here is to augment that by providing additional entry access points at 37th Street and 44th Street, shaft 3 within the cavern that exists right now, 50th Street as well as 55th Street. And by doing that, we started to look in reprogramming the use of the various entry points so we can then resequence the work and allow, in effect, the different contractors to step in and work around. Since right now we only have one contractor working in the tunnels, by doing that we are able to separate that and allow contractors to work at the same time. The whole idea here is that what we would do is we start reassigning work between various contracts in such a way so they can work at the same time, and by doing that mitigate the length of time, because until now we had to finish one to start the second and so forth. So by doing that, not only that we get some schedule advantages, but we're going to reduce risk, and that will be very important in order for us to be able to maintain an adequate schedule. What I would like to do is just walk you through. Okay, this is the original, the current contract calls for us reaching a milestone, and DJ actually stands for Dragados Jadla, a joint venture that has a $1.2 billion contract to build in effect, everything from the bell mouth in Queens all the way into 37th Street. And they were supposed to finish a specific milestone at a point that it was sometime in 2012, not far from now, about 4 months, about April of 2012, and that would have allowed us to actually start the precast and finish work in the caverns. So therefore, we would be able to finish that work sometime in 2014. What happened here is that DJ has experienced incredible delays that actually started to exacerbate last September in 2010, and they continued to the point that now they would finish that work at the end of 2013. When you superimpose the precast and finishes, what you get is, in effect, a 21-month delay. That's totally unacceptable. That would have allowed the linearity to progress. What we have done is we looked at mitigation way by providing access earlier, this whatever you saw before, all of these entry points, and that would allow us to. We actually split right now this point into two, the westbound and the eastbound, the west cavern and the east cavern, and now we superimpose in effect the same amount of months, 28 months on top of it. So now what we did is we're able to, and this is another contract that we're now separating. This is the south of the cavern, and we were able to mitigate about 12 months. I would like to also make it clear that this is something that we've worked continuously over the summer. We have actually worked with our contractor, but the IEC has not yet the opportunity to fully evaluate the plan, and they will have to actually have an opportunity to look at that more in depth. We believe that actually will mitigate about a year from this side of the work, given the current delays. The operational readiness mitigation will, in effect, reduce the scheduled time of activities, and the idea is that we will start the operational readiness prior to completing the integrated system testing, allowing that an overlap, and that on the critical path could reduce the schedule for up to 8 months. It's still, we're looking at it carefully, but that's something that we are working on. The system risk, the pre-purchasing of long lead items, again, the idea is to pre-purchase long lead items that will take up to 1.5 years once you order them. Just order them in advance and then install them when needed. Again, that has to be totally integrated within whatever we're doing right now, and is still under review with both Long Island Railroad and ourselves. There are lots of hurdles to doing that, but we still have time to make a decision on that. Now, the critical work in the Harold interlocking always was a major challenge for the project. We are working on the, I think that this is my pointer, right? This area, this is really Harold interlocking, the busiest interchange in northeast United States, about 750 trains traversing that. And now we are superimposing the work on the East River tunnels that actually is going to further exacerbate what we're doing there, and the fact that we have to continue to maintain the Long Island Railroad and Amtrak service to make sure that things are actually happening properly. Let me say that the Harold, okay, this area that, the area that I'm talking about here, just so you get a sense what we're building there, 5 new railroad bridges, 10 miles of new tracks, about 15 retaining walls, 15 signal bridges, 26 signal towers, 2.5 miles of new cables. So that is an incredibly complex work that has to occur there that is truly governed by the outages that we can get and how we can allow trains to operate while we, at the same time, we're doing our job. It's very different than what we're doing on number 7 and 2nd Avenue, as well as the Fulton Transit, for that matter. The Harold to address the delay in the Harold mitigations, okay, we had a discussion today at the Rail Committee regarding the potential impact on the Long Island Railroad operations as well as the East Side access. And this was all, as discussed, was precipitated by a number of broken rail incidents early in the year, and that would adversely impact the Long Island service from Penn Station. MTA chairman communicated again the MTA's concern to Amtrak on ongoing issues, and the result of it truly is the fact that a total track replacement was put in place. And just to summarize what was said today is that it will take approximately 4 years, 2 tunnels at a time out for 55 hours a weekend, I believe 38 weekends, as well as work during the week at nights. Now, this program, right, in effect, require us to have an incredible organized effort between Amtrak, Long Island, and ourselves to meet on a regular basis to develop an approach and schedule of this critical work. What we expect to do at the end of the day is to re-baseline the project to accommodate the total track replacement and rail service, while at the same time we're working through whatever other mitigating measures from prior delays that have been incorporated.
Michael, what are the current hours of work at the Harold Interlocking now? Is it
Alan?
We're working basically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We work where we can during the daytime hours. There's some work by nature that we can do during the night.
Is it reduced in rush hour, or?
It depends on where we're working. When we're working off the right-of-way, we can work through the rush hour. Work that's required on the right-of-way has to be done either nights or weekends. Nights you have a very limited time, so you move that work to weekends. The fact that we're going to have 2 tunnels out of service instead of, it just makes an added layer that we have to take into account.
Thank you.
One of the things that I would like to point out that we have stopped at one point, when we learned about it, we stopped looking at mitigating measures in Harold because now we had to look at it in a different light and see how we can integrate it. But now we are analyzing the impact of construction, and we're going to re-baseline the whole thing, and we expect by the end of this 4th quarter to come back to you to report. Also, I would like to mention that some of you know that there is something called the full funding grant agreement that set a date of April 2018. This is the federal government date, and our goal is to actually meet that date, and we'll be or beat it if whatever we can, and we'll come back to you when we're actually smarter and understand better what needs to get done. Thank you. Any questions?
Linda, you want me to? Should we take questions or go to the IEC first?
Go to the IEC.
Okay. So if you.
Does this mean that if there is an extreme difficulty in securing the funding for the rest of the project, we're committed to completing it anyway? On time?
Actually, I am very hopeful and actually positively thinking that based on the plan presented, I think it was in July, to the board as to how we're going to finance the capital program, that we will be in a position to do so.
Can I answer that question?
Mr. Chairman, I hope so.
Regardless of anything that we're talking about here, by virtue of agreements that the MTA entered into several years ago, as a condition for the federal grant, The MTA is committed to finishing the contracts and committed to finishing the projects.
That's the answer.
Aside from the Herald interlocking issue, it appears that just because of the Manhattan issues, you know you're going to have at least a 9-month delay, and what we don't know is what the Herald interlocking is going to cause us. Is that a summary?
The summary is that you could look at it that way, yet right now, just from the way we're seeing it, the critical path is no longer in Manhattan, it's switched to Herald.
I'm not debating that. I'm saying that
but we have not done. We have not.
Yes,
it does, and we have actually stepped in to do a lot of stuff with the contract in Manhattan, and in fact, I would like to discuss some of these things in executive session.
Can I suggest that we hear from the independent engineer? Kurt, are you doing it?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
And again, just to put this in some context, as we've been talking about the mitigations, this committee instructed the IEC to give us their feedback on the mitigation plan. In other words, we didn't want to go down a path that we weren't confident about, or that we didn't fully understand the risks of achieving some of the mitigations. So in many ways, that's the work that the IEC is reporting back to us on. Kurt?
Okay. So the IEC was directed to report the confidence of the proposed mitigation in June. In response, the IEC has evaluated the viability of these mitigations with respect to schedule. This review was undertaken mostly before the full scope and the full impact of the Amtrak East River Tunnel work was known, and the IEC is continuing to evaluate the impact of the East River Tunnel work and mitigations as they are prepared by the project team. So the IEC, whenever we came to this committee, we have reported that delays to the revenue service date of September 16, absent mitigations. The reasons for this were poor performance by the contractor in Manhattan, design approval and construction delays in Herald, and access issues for the systems work in the new East Side Access tunnels. MTACC, as Michael already stated before, has proposed 4 out-of-the-box actions to mitigate these delays. The first one was the delivery of the precast panels for the GCT caverns through Manhattan. This was then later extended to include additional access points, scope transfers, and the creation of a new contract. The reduction of the operational readiness duration, the pre-purchasing of the systems equipment, and what we call the delay of the PC approach structure, which was proposed to allow a leveling of resources for proceeding force account work. Our findings were that the mitigations reviewed by the IEC do not bring back the revenue service date to September 2016. However, there are 2 mitigations that offer benefits. First, bringing the precast panels through Manhattan will definitely improve access to the new East Side Access tunnels and reduce interference risks. And then any reduction in the operational readiness duration will result in time savings to a revised revenue service date. Furthermore, the costs to the project resulting from these mitigations have not yet been determined. During our review, we have also identified additional delays. These delays, which are currently still under discussions with the project team, are access and construction duration issues for the remaining work, third-party work in Herald. This mainly includes approach structures, two elements that are built for Amtrak, which are the eastbound reroute and westbound bypass. And also, we have found insufficient durations to structural and systems finish-out work in the Manhattan caverns. And last but not least, our recommendations. A lot of what we have here as our recommendations have been already brought up by Michael, but here are our three recommendations. We want Amtrak to be definitely included in a rebaselining effort, which considers the current delays, unmitigated risks, and the East River Tunnel work. We want to see as a part of the rebaselining to advance the westbound bypass and the eastbound reroute to comply with the high-speed rail grant requirements, and to improve the prospects of achieving the goal of a revised FFGA revenue service date. We would like to see a forming of a partnership between Amtrak and the MTA to create a vehicle to incentivize Amtrak, and we would like to see Long Island's position strengthened to lead the coordination in Herald and find the balance between customer service and construction, and not only that this lead is taken during the East River Tunnel rehabilitation work by Amtrak, but also kept for the remaining duration of work in Herald. And Jody Vito will now talk a little bit about what we mean under the first sub-bullet and the second bullet and the third bullet.
Just wanted to clarify a little bit on the incentivizing Amtrak statement that Kurt just made. It's the IUC's opinion, if the rebaseline is to be a success, that more resources are going to be needed from Amtrak in the way of manpower, like force account, and track outages, and possibly a resequencing of the East River Tunnel work that they're now undertaking, which would improve the prospects for a earlier westbound bypass and eastbound reroute schedule. We're well aware that the project and the Long Island Railroad are working very closely together continually on these items. But what we're saying is that we'd like those groups to look at these areas together, and if more resources are needed from Amtrak, then the appropriate parties, in the MTA and Amtrak included, find a way to incentivize Amtrak to provide them and combine them in a way that makes sense to both agencies and to document that, both agencies' commitments.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn to questions. One thing to keep in mind just in terms of our time, this committee has need for an executive session at the end of our committee time. So I will need to take a few moments for an executive session. Chuck?
I'll be brief. As I understand it, you're trying to incentivize Amtrak to be cooperative and help advance the project. My question is, am I correct that it was Amtrak derailments in March, or was it April, and then again later on, that started causing this problem, and Amtrak's new rail lines coming in and the problems of putting a new rail track into the East River Tunnel, this compounded it in part. What is it that makes you believe, other than the persuasive powers of our chairman, that they are going to be cooperative?
On the next one.
Well, first let me say that the incentive we're speaking of would partly be Amtrak's, in the sense that some of the benefits of this project Amtrak is going to be experiencing. The westbound and eastbound reroutes are regional improvements, high-speed rail improvements for the benefit of that agency.
I'd feel a lot better if I knew the chair was here for another year or two. Then I'd believe it.
How about 5 or 10? I do want to comment as well on this, and I can't speak for the independent engineer or Capital Construction. We have been taking the lead with Amtrak to move forward on a program of total track replacement that does identify a production schedule and identifies the commitments that need to be made to get this project done, at the same time allowing us to piggyback the east side access work in and then identify where there may be schedule conflicts. So we see that process being completed by the end of the year. I do recognize, and I've heard this before, the recommendation that we work to incentivize Amtrak. I do think that they have had some incentive because there was a real outcry over the Mother's Day derailment and the amount of time it did take to get service back. There was our inspection that revealed the amount of water in the tunnel. The chairman wrote, very, contacted and strongly commented about the need for Amtrak to be responsive. And, to Amtrak's, credit, they were extremely responsive, both with a short-term and a long-term plan.
I think this last point is very, very important. I mean, we sat here just a few months ago feeling very badly about that, and people raising questions about whether we needed to take the work on and we took a different approach of trying to work cooperatively with Amtrak, trying to find a way through. I think they did respond, and I'm actually very pleased by the way that they've responded, notwithstanding the fact that the response now has real impacts that are otherwise there. I mean, it feels a little bit like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, but you have to. We needed that response. And
they brought in a deputy chief, which I think will be enormously beneficial. They're trying to rearrange some of their work headquarters for their unionized labor. These projects are difficult, but I have a level of confidence that Amtrak is being very responsive. And we will stay with it. We are having weekly meetings that we are leading, in fact, on looking at the schedule, looking at the impact on customers, and developing ways in which we can ensure that the work gets done.
Other comments, questions, Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to get a clarification, if I can, on terminology for the IEC. The first point made in your findings is that the revenue service, that mitigations reviewed by the IEC do not bring the revenue service date back to September 2016. I'm trying to relate that to this schedule that was put forward by...
They have not had a chance to review the work. They've only looked at one specific thing that had to do with the precast work. There are many other things that are involved there, and they did not have the opportunity to review. I actually said that they are in the process of doing that. They knew about what we're doing, but it's very hard. We are working on it, and they were kind of coming on our heels, so they did not have the opportunity to review. So their right now comment is specifically related to one piece of work. Am I correct, Kurt? Not entirely. Okay.
We have looked intensively at Herald. We have looked at Manhattan. We haven't spent much time in Queens. We look at Manhattan and Queens in the context of the systems work, because the systems work follows the civil work in Manhattan and Queens. And in addition to the pressure on the schedule, which was well known by that time, we have found some durations in the IPS, an integrated project schedule, that we cannot support. So from those findings, and we are saying we haven't looked at everything yet, but at the time of our review, we did not think that the September 16 date is supportable.
Is this, Michael, is this date here of, April of 2015, is that the revenue service date?
No, but it's not so neat. Let me just look it up.
Just also to clarify, the timeline you have there is just for Manhattan work, and what the project said earlier is Manhattan is no longer, as that shows, the critical path. The critical path now is Harold. And that's in particular what we will be coming back to this committee to talk about once we've done the rebaselining with mitigations. The mitigations on that work have been put on hold. We're going to layer in all the different impacts of the construction delays that the project was having, the East River Tunnel work, mitigations that can be then be done, and then we'll come back and tell you what is going, what we believe the date is based on impacts at Harold.
But I think we need to know where we're starting, and there's got to be an apples to apples comparison, so we can understand, if you will, the scope of the disaster.
The current forecast, the current scheduled date for East Side access is September 2016.
Right.
Everything you have builds on length from that. That would be the place to start from. September 2016 is our current schedule. It has been our current schedule. And so anything we're talking about delayed builds on top of that.
Yeah. But does anything on this chart relate to a 2016 start?
It doesn't.
No. That's the problem.
I get it.
I tremendously appreciate all of this discussion. And we had some of it absent the IEC information at the rail committee this morning, but unfortunately we're left with two realistic situations here. Number one, the date of September 16 is gone. Doesn't matter how many, it's gone. And that was the date that, Long Island Railroad customers were promised for a long period of time. That date is gone, regardless of how much mitigation collectively we can find. It's irrelevant anymore. I hope we can still sit with April 2018. I'm not so sure about that after listening to the conversation. The second fact is that the customers of the Long Island Railroad now, for operational purposes for the next 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, and then during the construction period, are totally at the mercy of Amtrak. Period. And our relationship with Amtrak, or lack of relationship with Amtrak, depending on your point of view, is going to determine not only what happens to every Long Island Railroad passenger between today and then, but every time past that, whether they go into Penn Station or Grand Central. And that is, to me, a very uncomfortable situation. Because regardless of what we've done, trying to incentivize, penalize, whatever word you use, and I can come up with much better words than incentivize. I understand the political reality of the situation. We're faced with that scenario, and that is, to me, very uncomfortable. I'd much rather have the Long Island Railroad and MTA be our own guardians of the situation, our own providers of the dates, our own providers of the equipment, our own providers of the workforce, our own providers of everything, and yet we're not. We have to rely on another entity which clearly, regardless of how good they may be, do not have the best interests of the customers of the Long Island Railroad at heart. It's as simple as that. And that, to me, is a very, very uncomfortable position to be in, not only on September 26th, 2011, but every day beyond that. And I would welcome from the IEC any understanding or any ideas or any way in which we can feel more comfortable with that situation. Because left to its own devices, I don't. And I don't think any customer of the Long Island Railroad should either.
When does the Amtrak East River Tunnel work commence, and for how long is it expected to take?
They are actually beginning this weekend with a single tunnel outage. That will allow us to really get a better handle on the production schedule, both bringing the equipment into the tunnel, the workforce, the work trains, doing the work, and then moving it all out so that we're ready for Monday morning service. Beginning in January, they will then go to the two tunnel outages. We have long worked with one tunnel out on weekends. That's always been the way in which they've done their annual maintenance program. So this will, challenge the operation, and it will challenge Amtrak to be as effective and as efficient as possible in how they manage a double track outage.
And how long?
And depending on the production and the rate at which we can get good productivity at this, roughly 3.5 to 4 years. If we were able to really maximize productivity, it would be closer to the 3 years.
Will be out for 3.5 to 4 years.
On weekends at night.
Weekends
at night. And daytime.
I would think that it's to Amtrak's advantage, since they have many trains passing through, some of which are high speed, that they would like to get this work done as expeditiously as possible.
Yes, I think that, they recognize the importance of it from a service reliability perspective. They certainly recognize, the impact. They had the derailment, so they're very conscious of the need to get this work done.
Carl? Yeah, Mr. Chairman, is there any way that we could get somebody from Amtrak to come in and talk to the board about this? I mean, we're conjecturing a lot of different things happening that could happen or whatever, but I think it would be nice if there was a point person that we could talk to. Has anybody thought of that? I know they're talking to other committee members and people, not committee members, but to you, Helena, and other important people.
I will say I am in, weekly, sometimes daily contact with them. I will have a full report, for the rail committee. We certainly can bring it to CPOC as well on what their production schedule looks like, what their commitment of the staffing and resources will be, and how the project unfolds. I would always invite Amtrak, but my sense is they have their own board.
Yeah. No, I understand that. It'd just be nice to have somebody to talk to from Amtrak that we know is on top of this thing, because this is going to go on for a couple of years here.
Yes. And the individual that they brought in is a well-recognized individual, very knowledgeable about the New York area, a good rail person.
All right.
If I can I just to jump back in? I mean, I just want to underscore again, I actually think Amtrak is, as frustrating as it is, and I understand the point that Mitch is making, and I'm not, but as frustrating as that is, I think Amtrak actually is being very responsive right now, and I don't want it to leave in this committee a sense that they are not. I mean, following up what happened on Mother's Day, I spoke directly to Joe Boardman. We wrote. They were back with Long Island Railroad within days of that, trying to figure things out. Some of the solution of this is very painful, and again, it probably underscores a point that we know that is too well ingrained in our mind, which is that if you're not able to keep up with the infrastructure on a regular and routine basis, when you go in to try to do that, it has significant impacts, particularly when that work is on the right of way. So I just wouldn't want to leave the impression to this table that Amtrak is not being responsive right now. I don't think that's a fair impression of them. There are clearly complexities. It will be difficult. Helena is working with them, as she says, daily, weekly. But they are being responsive to us as we sit here right now, and I don't think when this committee and this board talked about that several months ago, we were concerned about that. I think they've met that bar. That's the only point to make. Mark, you had your hand up. I'm sorry.
Are the defects in the Amtrak right-of-way a sort of all-or-nothing question? I mean, is it all in equally bad shape? Do they basically have to replace everything to move a step forward, or are there gradations and timing flexibility in terms of what they really have to do when that could actually give you more flexibility in terms of how you could maneuver the tunnels and maintain service and progress in some access?
Let me just respond to that, because the quick answer is yes, everything must be replaced. This is called total track replacement. This means everything comes out and new goes in. In fact, they're doing pre-constructed panels of rail and ties already fastened, and they go in and put them down. While they're pulling the old stuff out, they're cleaning the entire drainage system. The good news, though, to the point you just made, Commissioner, is that they are very willing to be flexible in which tunnel they work in. And that's why the overlay of the East Side Access schedule is absolutely critical. They are saying, look, we recognize you have East Side Access work. We can be flexible in which tunnel we start out in, which tunnel we jump to. You know, they would like to see maybe 6-week segments where, for example, they're in Tunnel 4, and then we may say to them, could you go to Tunnel 3? Could you go to Tunnel 1? Could you go to Tunnel 2? They are willing to be flexible. That's why rebaselining is extremely important, because it'll allow us to match. And I always point out to everybody, it's 3 parts. It's the station platforms that connect to the tunnels, that connect to the rail infrastructure in Harold. In order to have an operating railroad, which is my goal, a reliable rail operation, I have to have all 3 things connected up and available to run the railroad on. They are willing to be flexible. We're going to be flexible in Penn Station. We may be sending customers to platforms on a weekend that we don't traditionally send customers to. So a variable can be the platform, a variable can be which tunnel, and to some limited extent, there can be a variable attached to where East Side Access is working. The problem for East Side Access is there is some absolutely distinct sequencing that is important because we have to maintain a signal logic. So they have to be in a place where they can maintain a signal logic for my operation. That I just want to emphasize, Jay's comments. I do think Amtrak has been extremely responsive. They've met every deadline over the summer when we wanted short-term inspection work completed and some short-term repairs. They are on it right now for this total track replacement program, and they're recognizing the need to piggyback the East Side Access work. I always say faster. I want to see good productivity, fast in, get the work done, get as many feet and as many panels as possible, because it goes right to the question of, I'd like to see this over in 3 years as opposed to 4 years.
I'd like to call this discussion, if I can, because I think we do have need to deal with the contract matter in exec session, and I know the board schedule's been very delayed already. So I want to try and do that. Obviously, this is a complex issue on a going forward basis. Again, I would encourage this committee to engage the discussion with the project team, but also with the IEC. One of the things that I've done as chair of this committee is to meet every month with the IEC, going through their views. The IEC is, by law, reporting to this committee. It is an outside independent view for this committee, and I think it's probably an important thing to continue and make sure that we're doing. The congressional delegation has been briefed. The Federal Transit Administration has been briefed. So we have done all the things that you would have expected or hoped that we would do at this stage.
State representatives too.
Mr. Chairman, does the jurisdiction of the IEC in this situation also apply to Amtrak's work in the East River tunnels?
Well, I think the IEC works for us, and I think to the extent that the question is of the plan and the work taking place, I think certainly it goes to that as well. You can't separate the two.
Thank you.
But I think that's the IEC process started about 25 years ago. I think it's a very important one for us and for this committee, and I just think we should be using it that way. So, there are a couple of other items in your book. I would rather. I'm sorry.
Just one thing I wanted to add, that the IEC participates in the currently ongoing meeting between Long Island Railroad, East Side Access, and Amtrak. Yes, it does. Yes.
There are a couple other things in your book. If there are questions, I think Linda can take them offline. She's very happy to work with anyone on that. What I would request is a motion to go into executive session for a matter leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. Okay, thank you. We can clear the room. Thank you.